Hi, I'm Alex. This is Books and Paperbacks, where I love to shout about queer and trans books. Today I am sharing with you the 19 books that I've read recently and which ones are worth it. If you've ever wanted a personalized book recommendation from me, now is the time. I am putting together a video where I gather personalized book recommendations and I answer your recommendations. Go over to my Bindery, become a free or paid member, fill out the form, and you might be featured in my upcoming video. I'll also be doing a full roundup post on Bindery, sharing all of the recommendations. In case you missed it, I posted my best books of the year video and my year in review where I share my reading stats from 2025, media favorites, and more. Those videos will be linked down below. My last reading wrap up was in September, so I'm just going to rapid fire what I read from October to November. Ophelia After All by Raquel Marie. I reread Confetti Realms by Nadia Shamas. Our Way Back to Always by Nina Marino. And Winter Counts by David Heska Wimbley Wyden. If you want full reviews of these titles, I read the majority of them for TBR Tackle, so I'll link that playlist down below. In December, I read 8 books, starting with Those Pink Mountain Nights by Jen Ferguson. I listened to the audiobook, narrated by Sean Taylor Corbett, Julie Lumsden, Aaliyah Werbis, and Kimberly Woods. I read this for my reading vlog, Reading Books from Cancelled Videos. I read books from video concepts that I canceled, and I am so glad that I did that because I found so many good books. I've been wanting to read this for a long time, and I'm so glad that I did. This YA contemporary is following 4 Indigenous teens who work at a pizza shop and are dealing with issues such as abusive parents, a missing cousin, being queer, and being in remission from childhood cancer. I just adored this. I loved the way that it was written, the characters, and the storytelling. Indigenous authors truly have the best storytelling. Content warnings for friendship breakup, adult minor relationship, sexual assault, car accident, animal death, grooming, pedophilia, MMIW, teen pregnancy, childhood cancer in the past, emotional abuse, depression, anti-blackness, racism, microaggressions, grief, death of a parent, and toxic relationship. Next, I read a novella that I didn't think I was going to love as much as I did, Deck the Holes by Kat Cassidy. This was such a fun read. I read it for the Queer Lit Readathon, so I do have a vlog where I share more of my thoughts. I loved this. It is a romance between a trans man with a head cold and a cis man who is a former mobster. It was hilarious and endearing. I ate it up. Content warnings for brief mentions of unsupportive family and past relationships, references to addiction and enabling, light gore, sneezing, coughing, character who has a common cold. Most Ardently by Gabe Cole Novoa is so good. I read the audiobook narrated by Harrison Knights, who is one of my favorite narrators. He crushed it. This is a trans Pride and Prejudice retelling following Oliver Bennett, who is closeted. It was everything that I was looking for. I loved how much trans joy was here. I was giddy reading this book. I highly recommend it. I appreciated this book so much. Also, I've never read Pride and Prejudice, and I think that Gabe did a really good job of setting the scene without you having to know anything about the story. Content warnings for minor transphobia, dead naming and misgendering on page. The character's not out. Depictions of gender dysphoria and unsupportive parent. For the Queer Lit Readathon, I read the picture book Love Violet by Charlotte Sullivan Wilde. This was so cute. Violet has a crush on a girl in her class, Mira, and it's Valentine's Day. So she puts together an elaborate Valentine to give to her, signed Love Violet. She gets really nervous. She doesn't know what's going to happen, and once Mira gets the Valentine, all is well. It was so cute. Highly recommend. I also read volume 3 of Confessions of a Shy Baker. I really like this series. I do think it has some problems because it shares calorie counting and dieting, but I still think it's a good manga and I like the social commentary. In this volume specifically, I liked how Tosh is coming out of his shell, becoming more comfortable with his sexuality, and coming out to friends. This is really good character development from him. But not everybody has to come out, so he doesn't have to. However, I like the way that this manga is treating that delicately and I like the story progression. This also discusses Gon's family and his parents getting older. Content warnings for dieting, calorie counting, fat phobia, minor transphobia. There's a scene where a character says homophobic remarks and is challenged. Minor mention of a character considering foster parenting. Minor mention of injury, medical content, and there's a hospital visit. Next, I read another picture book. Every year I like to try to read a book from every letter of the alphabet. I was not successful this year, but for Z, I wanted something quick. For Z, I read Zayn's Super Day by Hina Khan. This is a heartwarming picture book following Zayn and his dad on a special day, going to their local mosque on a Friday for a special prayer. This was really sweet. It is so important for kids to have that representation, and I'm glad that they have it here. I also read Thirsty by Jazz Hammonds for that cancelled vlog. I loved this so much. I'm gonna be talking about it for a while. We follow Blake, a biracial girl who wants to get into the secret society, the Serena Society. It is a society of Black women. Her friend Ella's mom has been in it, and it is something that both girls strive for. As the book goes on, we see that Blake has an alcohol addiction. She is dealing with mental health issues, identity, and she is just drinking so much. This was so well written. I loved the writing. It was fantastic. I loved it so much. If you're sensitive to alcoholism in recovery or experience depressive or suicidal ideations, I would say to skip this because it can be triggering. But I think it's a very necessary read for teens who are struggling with the things that Blake is. I knew a lot of people who drank underage. It wasn't me, but there were people around me who did, and I kept thinking about that as I read this book. So I think it's very necessary for teens that are in Blake's position. This also talks about classism and secret societies, as Ella and Blake want to get into the Serena Society and are willing to do whatever it takes to get in, even if it means getting blackout drunk every night. I liked Blake's character development as she slowly realizes that she does have mental health issues and is addicted to alcohol. This book is split into a full year, and something that is so specific that I love in books is when they actually give you the dates. I like to know what time we're in, what month we're in, what day it is. So I really appreciated that we get the months here. Content warnings for alcoholism, alcohol, underage drinking, self-deprecating thoughts and comments, depression, depressive and suicidal thoughts, toxic relationship, hazing, microaggressions, racism, mention of a white character doing blackface in the past. The last book I read in December was The Summer of Everything by Julian Winter. This was to check office space for the Buzzword Reading Challenge. I read this in March and then I had to give it back to my library. Then I was able to read it again in December, and I'm glad that I read it. I liked the story, but I don't think it's my favorite of Julian Winter's books. I don't have anything specific that I didn't like. I just wasn't as invested as I have been in his other stories, but I still liked the concept of this book. We have some family dynamics, and at the root of the book is a best friends to lovers romance. It's an incredibly nerdy book. We follow Wes, whose mom is a famous author, and he works in the local bookshop. But him and his fellow co-workers find out that the bookshop is going to close. This was really sad at points, but I liked the comedic relief. Also, just seeing Wes swoon over his best friend was so cute. Loved his best friend Nico. Honestly, I wish we had a dual POV and maybe saw some of his. Even if I could just get a full book about Nico, I would love that. He was so endearing. I really loved him. I just liked their dynamic. I do like a best friends to lovers sort of situation, but there's a lot of things going on here. Wes is dealing with things of his own with his brother and his family. Also trying to save this bookshop. He is so determined. I love books that are set in bookshops and when they have some marketing elements, so I like that that was incorporated as well. We have some non-binary characters. There's an asexual character. For the most part, it has a full queer cast. I liked the story. It just wasn't my favorite. Content warnings for cancer, grief, death of a parent, absent parents, drug use, a scene where characters smoke weed, racism, and a panic attack on page. Now we go over to January, where I read 2 books. My start of the year was so terrible. I lost somebody close in my life, and I just thought I was never gonna read again. Like, I really thought I was never gonna read again. I actually thought I would never listen to music again either, but February was better. However, in January, I was just like, I need to read something. So I went to my comfort manga, Cat Gamer Volume 3 and 4. I love this series so much. It is about a woman who gets a cat but has never owned a cat before. It's hilarious just seeing her be confused by some of the things that her cat is doing. I actually like the way that this is going. It's very light and it really helped me in the time that I needed it. I also really liked where Volume 4 went. I'm not going to spoil anything here, but I highly recommend this series if you are a cat owner. It is hilarious, and I like the way that it incorporates gaming. February was a way better month for me. I did a readathon in my private Discord with my Patreon and Bindery members. It's totally free. You just have to become a member of my Bindery and have access to my Discord. Join us. The next readathon will be in April. This time around, I did it from Friday to Tuesday, and I'll do that again because I read so much. I do some reading sprints, and I have a book club, which I will mention as well because I read a book for that. I needed some grief books as I was going through it, and my friend Beck shared this on their Instagram story, and I decided to give it a try. I got it from Libby, and before I was even finished, I ordered it on Bookshop, and I am so glad I did. I just feel like this is something that is going to sit on my bookshelf for the times that I need it. This is Welcome to the Grief Club Because You Don't Have to Go Through It Alone by Janine Kuo. I'll have a link to it down below. I thought this was so useful and the perfect book that I needed at that moment. I had started reading books about grief, but there was just nothing that was actually speaking to me until I read this. It was just so validating. I loved all the passages. There's a specific quote that I liked that I shared in my Storygraph review. I also liked that it has pictures. It was just so comforting for me as somebody who was going through grief for the first time as an adult. I really resonated with this. I also finished an audiobook that I was reading in January. I had gravitated towards some healing fiction. I just needed something that was light and wasn't going to trigger me. Unfortunately, the majority of books that I own are heavy, dark books with sensitive topics, so it was very hard for me to find something. I had an ALC from Libro FM of The Healing Hippo of Hinode Park by Michiko Aoyama, narrated by Naruto Komatsu, Kenichiro Thompson, Susan Momoko Hingley, Yuriri Naka, and Ami Okamura Jones. I thought this was fine. I like the interconnected stories. Basically, it's about this hippo in a play area in Hinode Park where people believe that if they go there, the hippo will heal their wounds. So we have, I believe, 4 or 5 different stories of people who are dealing with things in their lives and they go to this hippo to heal. That's not entirely true. We do see that, like, there's things that they do in their lives that help. So we have a bunch of different scenarios. There's one person who hopes in vain to recover the stellar marks he once scored. A new mother with no friends who wishes to be able to communicate as she once did when she was an award-winning retail assistant. Another is off work as a wedding planner and longs to listen better for the happiness of others. Another character who I believe is a teen avoids sports day with a fake injury but learns that he's actually in pain. And last is a heartbreaking story. This is a character who is realizing that his time with his mother is not going to be forever and he wants her back in his life. I really enjoyed that story. Out of all of these, that was definitely my favorite. I thought it was fine. It wasn't my favorite thing, but I would recommend it if you want healing fiction, if you just want something light and you like interconnected stories. Content warnings for injury and injury detail, bullying, medical content, grief, Pregnancy, Blood, and Fat Phobia. For episode 7 of TBR Tackle, I read Tyler Johnson Was Here by J. Coles. I'm so glad I read this. I appreciated the storyline, but the fact that this has joy. I was really nervous that this was just going to be a bunch of trauma, but it is so joyous in between the heavy moments. We follow Marvin, who is a geek, he's good at school, and dreams to go to MIT in the fall. He's also a twin. When he is at a party looking after his twin brother Tyler, Tyler goes missing. This leaves Marvin, his friends, and his mother so nervous. Eventually, they find out that Tyler has been murdered by police. So this book ends up talking about police brutality and the Black Lives Matter movement. I really enjoyed this. I loved the writing. This published back in 2018. I would say it still holds up. However, there are so many Harry Potter references, so if that's sensitive to you, you might want to skip this one. Content warnings for multiple Harry Potter references, racism, police brutality, and child death. The next book I read was for my book club. If you haven't heard, yes, I have a book club, but it's not your traditional book club. It is themed, not based on a single book. I've had so much fun with it so far. I have an announcement, so I'll link that video down below if you want to join us. February's theme was events. I knew I was going to want to read about the Olympics because I was so obsessed with watching it. So I picked Ski Cross Lovers by Alison Temple. This is an Olympic Achellian romance. It's childhood best friends to lovers between cross-country skiers. I was really disappointed by this book. It had me in the first half, and then the middle was so rushed that I was ranting to my friends in voice messages because I was so confused about this book. I think this was just a book that wasn't for me. I think if you want a short and sweet book about Olympic skiers and it's a spicy romance, this will be for you, but I just wish it had more build up. I was so confused because there's a big conflict that happens. I was so confused by it. Just the fact that it felt like it was just kind of dumped in there, and then the progression isn't what I wanted. I just wish it had been written differently, and I think that it could have been bulked up more. This is a collection of independently published romances set during the Olympics, all from different queer self-published authors. I really wish I had loved this one. I was really excited for it. There were some things that I liked, but I just wish it was more constructed and built up, but I understand that this just needed to be like a short and sweet book, but I wish there was more. I don't want to spoil anything, but my biggest problem was with the big conflict that happens. I feel like there should have been more build up there. I understand because of what the characters' intentions are. I just wish it had been reframed more. And then we have a time skip, and I was so confused because I'm like, wait, this doesn't really feel realistic. And I know it's romance. That's what gets me sometimes when I read romance, is I cannot suspend my disbelief because I'm just like, that wouldn't happen. And I know because it's a fictional book, but on principle, I'm like, there's so many other things I would have changed about this book. I don't think it's horrible. The writing was fine. The characters are good, but the story is what drew me into this book, and I felt let down. Content warnings for ableist language, gore, blood, PTSD, injury and injury detail, vomit, and there are panic attacks on page. There is a very gory scene, so just a heads up about that. The author does warn you at the beginning of the book and give some content warnings, and I really appreciate that. And the last book I read was for my weekend readathon through Discord. This is open to my free and paid members of Patreon and Bindery. We have so much fun doing these. I'm so glad I was able to bring this back in February because it helped me read a lot. I created a bingo card and I checked off a bunch of the spaces. For my top members, I started doing monthly vlogs. This is just an extension of my reading vlogs and lifestyle. I just take you throughout my month. I had a lot of fun with this, and I shared some footage from that readathon. So for the readathon, this is what my bingo card looked like, and I wanted to check off the spaces, read a book published in February, and a book that is a graphic novel or comic. So I scoured my Libby, finding a book that would help me out, and I found Influenza by Jade L.F.T. Peters. This is set in Philly about queer zombie hunters. It's super short. I believe it was like under 80 pages. I really enjoyed it. Content warnings for nudity. This is a over 18 book, not safe for work, but I loved it. I love zombies, especially queer zombies. This was just so funny. As somebody from Philly, it spoke to me. I loved the line that said, only people from Philly would be able to survive a zombie apocalypse. That is so true. I thought this was really funny, and I love the illustrations. I highly recommend it. Those were all the books that I read recently. Let me know your thoughts. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. It really helps me out. And if you're new here, hi, I'm Alex. I'm a trans man who loves to uplift queer and trans books on my corners of the internet. So if you're into that, hit subscribe. Thank you so much to my top members for their support this month and throughout the year. I really appreciate you. If you want to join in on the fun events and get access to my weekly newsletter and exclusive content, become a free or paid member over on Bindery. I'd love to have you. Your support has a significant impact helping me to one day have my own publishing imprint. The links are below. I hope to see you over there. If you would like to watch more, YouTube recommends you watch this and you can subscribe there. Bye.